Hello everyone, my name is Roya, and this half of this month I have so far read 5 books, and 2 of them were audiobooks and 3 of them were physical books, and they all fit in with Feminist Lit Feb, so that makes me really happy. So anyway, let's just get started. The first audiobook that I listened to was Defy by Sarah B. Larson, and this book follows a girl named Alexa who has spent the past 3 years dressed as a boy so that she can be in the prince's guard instead of being sent to the breeding house, which really makes no sense. So basically the breeding house is this place where like all the orphan girls pretty much get taken to basically be raped all the time until they get pregnant, and then those babies become soldiers and whatnot, and that made absolutely no sense to me because I felt like that was just the worst, like, most inefficient way of getting soldiers ever. I mean, seriously, do you really want to wait like 14 or 15 years for like each girl to have a baby and that baby to grow up and be like big enough to go and fight? Like, no. Just why not just train the women to fight because they're already old enough? Like, what's the big, it made no sense. So then basically as a result, Alexa's entire reason for masquerading as a boy made no sense either. So basically, I think you can tell that I just didn't like this book. But the thing that really, really made me really not like this book is that it had the worst, most frustrating love triangle I have ever encountered in my life, and that is really saying something. So basically, the second guy who falls in love with her has no purpose in the love triangle at all. His being in love with her added absolutely nothing. And also, her feelings for these two guys and their feelings for her come out of absolutely nowhere. So for the first half of the book, there's no love interest whatsoever, and so I kept thinking, oh, there's no love interest. Like, this is gonna be different and unique. Like, nope. I mean, they both fall in love with her, like, and they confess that they always were in love with her and all this other stuff, and that they always knew that she was a girl the entire time, and yet nobody else did, and then, like, so suddenly we get these comments from her narrative that's like, I couldn't help but notice how handsome he was, just out of nowhere halfway through the book, when there was nothing like that at all for the whole first half of the book, and it made no sense. And then basically, also, what really annoyed me a lot was that there's a scene where she's making out in the woods with one of the guys, and she's like afraid that the other guy is going to like discover them, and he almost does, and then that same scene repeats itself a couple chapters later with the two guys' roles reversed. So I thought that had so little point, it made no sense, and I just, like, it made me so annoyed. And then also basically, this whole book sort of felt like I was reading the first chapter for like half the book. And it really did not get good until the end. Like, the ending was really good, but besides that, like, just the whole thing, there like barely anything happened. And then also there's a magic system in it that really we don't even get an introduction to until about halfway through the book, and then it's never explained very well at all for the entire rest of the book. And the other audiobook that I listened to is Magic Bites by Ilona Andrews, and this is the first book in the Kate Daniels series, and this is an urban fantasy about it takes place in Atlanta, only magical things and magical creatures are pretty much known to exist, and they always have been, and this girl named Kate Daniels charges herself with, getting rid of supernatural things that are doing bad things, and throughout this book she is investigating the murder of the guy who pretty much raised her after her father died. So I really, really liked how slightly different this book was from other urban fantasies. Like, it had a really unique take on a lot of the creatures in it, especially vampires. Like, its take on vampires is really unique and really different. And it's also a lot creepier than most urban fantasies that I've read. Like, honestly, some of the creatures in it are just, like, really, really creepy. I mean, really. And there are kind of, even though nothing super weird happens on scene, there are some, like, allusions to monster things, like raping people and whatnot, and so it's really creepy. Like most urban fantasies that I've read, the first book is kind of the one that just sort of introduces you to the world and the characters, and really the action doesn't start until probably the next one. But I definitely liked this book, and I definitely plan to read the rest of the series as well. The first physical book that I read was Equal of the Sun by Anita Amirazvani, and this is a historical fiction book that follows Pari Safavi, who was actually a princess in Iran in the 1500s, and it is told in the point of view of this eunuch who serves her, and they become like really good friends and all this other stuff. And basically I just loved seeing like two main characters who don't get together or have any sort of romantic involvement at all. And actually, Pari is a lesbian, but not necessarily named as such, but she's basically been together with this one servant lady through, like, since the start of this book, and I thought that was really, really awesome. And so basically what happens in this book is that the Shah dies, and until a new Shah is decided, like until everyone's still kind of deciding which of the Shah's sons and people are going to be the next one, Pari kind of takes the throne and sort of figures things out in the meantime and whatnot. And then like and she's just such a badass and just finds ways to get like more politically involved, even though she's a woman and they don't really let her do anything. And there's also just the fact that she just refuses to get married and have kids or anything. Like every time she says, oh hey, I want to be more politically involved, I want to do more of this and that, and then they'll say like, oh well, if you're bored we could just like find you a husband and you can have kids and then you'll be occupied, and she's like, ew, no, gross, like please stop. And so I really, really liked that. I mean, this book is super, super good. As a Persian, half Persian girl, it was really fascinating for me to, you know, delve into some of my own history. And also, I mean, Pari was just such a fascinating character, and so is Javaher, who is the eunuch who tells this story. And of course, the ending is very, very sad, but I knew that that was probably gonna be what happened, because I looked up Pari Safavi and saw what happens to her, and I wasn't sure if this book would necessarily go all the way there, but it did. So it's very sad. It is a really, really good historical fiction book. It's full of political intrigue. Like the entire thing is just political intrigue. So if you don't like stuff that's super, super slow, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this for you, but I loved it. The next book I read was also a historical fiction book, and that is Girl in Blue, and this follows the story of Sarah Wheelock, who is a girl who runs away from home when her father tries to marry her off to like some gross old guy, and she joins the army and ends up fighting in the Civil War. And then when the people in the army discover that she's a girl, they're like, dude, you kind of faked your identity and your age and all this stuff to join the army, so that's kind of breaking the law. So but we're not going to send you to jail, we're going to give you this job at a detective agency. So she ends up becoming a spy, and spying on this woman who actually did exist in that era. So this book was a little bit slow at times, but it's also like a really old book. I mean, my best friend from high school read this, I think, and that was like over 10 years ago. Sarah Wheelock didn't actually exist in history, but her story is based on a woman who actually did exist. A lot of the stuff that Sarah does besides working at the detective agency is all stuff that this woman actually did, whose life that this story was based on, kind of. Like she actually did run away, join the army, and then eventually go home still under the guise of like a male soldier, and her family doesn't recognize her, and all this stuff. So that all actually happened to somebody, and there are actually a lot of women who dressed up as men to join the Civil War. The fifth and final book that I read in the first half of February is Empress of a Thousand Skies by Rhoda Belleza, and basically, if you follow me on Twitter, this was one of my two most anticipated releases of the year, besides the Three Dark Crowns sequel, and the other one also comes out this month, so you will see that in my my final, you know, my part 2 wrap up. I do have a full review of this book up, so if you want to see more of what my thoughts were, you can definitely check that out. But this follows a princess named Rhiannon who is thought to be dead, and it also follows the guy who is blamed for her murder, and this takes place in a sci-fi space world. It's a space opera, and it is amazing. I really, really liked it. I gave it 4 stars. Those are the books that I read in the first half of February. Let me know what your favorite book was that you read so far this month, and I will see you very soon with a new video. Bye!